At this time of year, the Sydney property market usually springs to life. But it's been a subdued start to the auction season, with property prices across that city now in reverse. Melbourne is also very flat. It's a different story in Adelaide, Hobart, Canberra and Brisbane. Jeff Thompson takes a look at what's going on.
Well, welcome to our house. This is our lounge room, just coming through.
When professional landscaper Kieran Edwards bought this house 6 years ago for $610,000, he was thinking long term.
It's sort of where we do all our entertaining and, cook and prepare our meals here. It's a beautiful outlook. It's what I fell in love with when I bought the property.
The median house price in this part of Penrith is more than $820,000. After doing this place up himself, Kieran believed it had doubled in value to almost $1.2 million, until he tried to sell it.
You haven't found yet people who love it as much as you do?
No, that's the hard thing, really. I just assumed that someone would straight away walk in and, love it like I loved it, but they're just having trouble getting finance, having trouble getting across the line.
Like many homeowners in and around Sydney and Melbourne, Kieran and his wife Jessica have gotten used to years of continuous property price growth. Their prime position in Penrith had them so confident of a quick and easy sale that they've already bought elsewhere.
Thought we might sell it the first week. Someone would come in and go, yep, it's mine. And it just hasn't happened.
After almost 2 months on the market, their house still hasn't sold.
There's a bit of pressure on you now to sell?
Yeah, there is. So we've bought another property up the mountains, and we've committed to that. We can settle up there and still be okay, but we've got a family, 3 kids. I need to be comfortable.
Yeah, it'll be tight.
It'll be very tight. We'd be stretched.
Real estate agent Daniel Latty is helping the Edwards adjust their expectations in a cooling and tighter lending market.
We've had buyers come back multiple times and you can tell they get quite emotionally connected to the home. Unfortunately, this hasn't worked out because more often than not, the banks have changed some of the lending policies and it's affected the ability for them to do the transaction.
And normally, in recent times, it's been easy to move properties in this area?
We've had a really good few years out here. There's been a real spike in prices. There's been a lot of competition to get into suburbs like this. That's certainly changed and the market has been transitioning.
So I say a fair and reasonable start to commence.
Property is a risky thing and we're all being reminded of how risky it is right at the minute.
For 11 months in a row now, Australian home prices have headed south, led by falls in Melbourne and Sydney.
We will pass the property in favour of the vendor bid. I thank you all for your competition today.
Everybody's sitting on their hands. That's what's happening. During the boom, which lasted for pretty much 5 years, but only in Sydney and Melbourne, you couldn't stop people buying. They were desperate to buy anything. And right now, everyone's got what they wanted, which was things to slow down, and they're doing nothing. That's pretty much what's happening.
Really, it's a different ball game now for homeowners in terms of capital growth.
Across the 5 capital cities, property prices are down about 3% this year. But in our 2 biggest cities, prices have fallen further. Sydney's a sea of red. In some areas, property prices are down almost 10% in the past year. The price falls in Melbourne are less steep and more patchy. The city's inner east has fallen furthest, 6.1% in 12 months. These falls have come after a decade of often spectacular growth, helped by the Reserve Bank cutting interest rates to historic lows.
Really, the price growth was unsustainable, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne.
There have been dips throughout, but this time might be different, says independent property researcher Andrew Wilson.
We're seeing a natural progression into this steady but stagnant house price environment. I think that's what the future holds for us now.
Sydney-based buyer's agent Veronica Morgan agrees that a combination of low incomes and tighter regulation has pushed property values into uncharted waters.
There's increased scrutiny that started with investors and has gone right through all borrowers, really. We've also had the Royal Commission, and this is all driven by policy rather than by interest rates, which is what traditionally slows things down. So this is what I mean by uncharted waters. We don't really know how we're all going to react to this.
People's perception of their property's value feeds into the broader economy too.
When the value of people's homes is going up, when the value of their investment properties is going up, even though they haven't got any more cash in their pockets, they feel better off. And so they tend to spend more. Now, of course, the wealth effect also works in reverse. When people think that the paper value of their home or their investment property is falling, they become less prepared to spend, and that means that the economy slows down.
The ongoing new apartment boom in our major cities could see some lose on their investment.
There's no doubt that we are at the peak of the supply cycle for apartments at the moment, and developers are doing it tough, or a lot tougher than they have in recent years finding a buyer.
The substantial increase in the number of apartments that have been built over the last couple of years is one of the things that have led to the price of housing starting to fall a bit. Now, of course, that's not a disaster. If you want housing to be more affordable, by definition, it's got to be cheaper.
That's good news for first home buyers, but not for those needing to sell.
I've still got an expectation of a price. Maybe it's not the right expectation. It's only really worth what someone's wanting to pay at the end of the day.
More pressure is building. Australia's household debt to income ratio is among the highest in the world, and 3 major banks have just raised interest rates.
Maybe homeowners and the housing market as a whole will have to get used to not having that strong capital growth we've had through the cycles, really for a number of generations in Australia.
First time sowing.
If it takes the wind out of people's sails and it actually makes people stop and think, and they have to be more selective in their asset choice because they don't have enough money to buy whatever they want, then yes, that's something that it could bring us back to reality.
For the third, final time,